Winter's grip clung to the Carpathians like a shroud in the year 1462, the air thick with the bite of frost that seeped into bones and turned breath to fleeting ghosts. You stand at the edge of a vast plain near Târgoviște, the voivode's stronghold, where the earth should yield to spring's tentative green, but instead heaves under an unnatural weight. First comes the smell, a rancid wave crashing over you. Not the clean rot of autumn leaves, but something fouler, a miasma of decay laced with iron and bile, carried on a wind that whispers secrets no man should hear. It clings to your cloak, invades your nostrils, makes your stomach churn as if poisoned. Then the sounds, a low, incessant hum, not of insects, but of something alive in its agony, muffled groans rising like a dirge from the field, punctuated by the sharp crack of settling wood and the distant caw of crows disputing their feast. Your boots sink into mud softened not by rain but by fluids you dare not name, the ground spongy, reluctant, as if the soil itself recoils from what it cradles. Closer now, the sight unfolds in layers that strip away your illusions of order. Stakes, thousands upon thousands, driven deep like the spines of some colossal beast, each topped with a form twisted, sagging, some still faintly stirring under the pallid Sunday. Men in tattered forace, women with hair matted like forgotten banners, their outlines blurring into a grotesque silhouette against the horizon. A forest, not of oak or pine, but of human silence, stretching a mile in cruel arc. Sultans have marched with armies that darken the sky, but this halts an empire. Mehmed II, conqueror of Constantinople, reigns in his horse at the tree line, his viziers paling behind silk veils, and for a moment, the world holds its breath. He turns away, the retreat, a shadow fleeing light, his legions scattering like chaff before a scythe. What kind of mind harvests souls to sow terror across kingdoms, turning fields into memorials of dread that echo for centuries? Before we go further, I need to be transparent. What you're about to hear involves systematic torture on a scale that defies easy comprehension impalement, a method drawn from the grim lexicon of medieval warfare, but wielded here as an instrument of psychological dominion. The details are historically documented, drawn from Byzantine chronicles like those of Leonikos Chalkokondyles, who wrote within decades of the events, Ottoman defters recording the toll on their envoys, and the German incunabular pamphlets that spread the tales across Europe by the 1,480 seconds. These aren't fabrications for idle horror, they're attestations from envoys, survivors, and adversaries alike, but they are deeply disturbing, evoking a revulsion that lingers. If this weighs too heavily, if the shadows grow too long, step away without a second thought. There's no shame in guarding your peace. History's burdens are not meant for solitary carrying. For those who remain, I commit to navigating this with the restraint it demands. We'll illuminate the machinery of power that birthed these acts, not to revel in the gore, but to dismantle the illusions that allow such systems to rise. These accounts aren't mere chronicles of cruelty, they're cautionary architectures, blueprints of what happens when authority divorces humanity, reminding us that the past's echoes can still fracture the present if we forget to listen. This wasn't savagery born of chaos. This was a calculated architecture, a deliberate engineering of fear that transformed a beleaguered principality into a bulwark against empire at the cost of rivers of blood and forests of the forsaken. Vlad III, Dracula, voivode of Wallachia, didn't impale to sate a personal thirst for violence, though whispers of pathology swirl like mist around his name. No, this was strategy forged in the crucible of survival, a psychological siege where stakes served as both weapon and warning, deterring invaders from the east while purging disloyalty within. The question isn't whether you can stomach the truth of those impaled fields, with their 20,000 shadowed forms swaying in the breeze, as described by Chalkokondyles. It's whether you're willing to remember it not as legend, but as the grim ledger of a man who bent history to his will, leaving scars that time has yet to fully heal. In the shadow of the Ottoman Colossus, Wallachia, in the mid-15th century, was no sovereign realm, but a fractured buffer, a land of jagged Carpathians and Danube floodplains, where loyalties shifted like sand under boot. The year was 1453, when Mehmed II's cannons breached Constantinople's walls, unleashing a tide that lapped at Europe's fringes. Wallachia, wedged between Hungarian crowns and Turkish crescents, paid tribute in gold, and boys' Christian youths conscripted as janissaries, their faith bartered for fragile peace. Economic veins ran thin, salt mines yielded wealth, but boyar estates hoarded it, their fortresses dotting the hills like wary eyes. Social hierarchies were ironclad voivodes, rose not by divine right alone, but through the Order of the Dragon, a chivalric pact sworn against infidels, yet riddled with intrigue. Military might hinged on peasant levies and mercenary bands, their spears no match for Ottoman Sipahis unless terror tipped the scales. These events are attested in multiple primary threads. The Byzantine historian Leonikos Chalkokondyles, whose histories penned between 1464 and 1468, draws from eyewitness dispatches. The Slavic Skazany o Draculae Voivode, a 15th century Russian chronicle compiling tales from envoys, Ottoman fiscal records, or defters, tallying lost tax collectors, and the flurry of German pamphlets, printed in Nuremberg and Augsburg by 1480, fueled by Saxon merchants' vendettas, but corroborated by Hungarian diplomatic letters archived in Vienna. Archaeology offers scant bones, stakes rot, graves scatter, but a 2003 excavation at Târgoviște uncovered mass burial pits with trauma, consistent with blunt force, hinting at the scale. Recent scholarship, like Florin Curta's 2022 reassessment in East Central Europe, tempers the numbers, perhaps 40,000, total over 6 years, not the pamphlet's hyperbolic 100,000, yet affirms the method's ubiquity, a tactic Vlad learned in Ottoman captivity and weaponized against his former hosts. To grasp the forests that would choke invading armies, you must first trace the forge that shaped their architect. Vlad wasn't born a monster, he was assembled, piece by harrowing piece, in the antechambers of power where love curdled into suspicion and trust dissolved like mist at dawn. Born in Sighișoara in 1431, the second son of Vlad II, Dracul Voivode and Dragon Knight, young Dracula, entered a world already stained by ambition's blade. His father, a wiry man with a mustache like coiled wire and eyes that missed nothing, balanced on the razor's edge between Hungarian patronage and Ottoman suzerainty, his dragon pendant a talisman against both. Dracul's court buzzed with schemers, boyars in fur-trimmed caftans plotting alliances, envoys from Buda bearing Matthias Corvinus's seals. Yet beneath the feasting halls, whispers of betrayal festered. Dan II, a rival claimant, lurked in Transylvanian shadows, backed by Saxon guilds who saw Wallachia's chaos as opportunity for trade dominance. At 11, in 1442, the gears turned. To seal a pact with Sultan Mehmed II, Dracul dispatched Vlad and his younger brother Radu as hostages to the port, a gilded cage in Adrianople where silk-draped seraglios masked iron discipline. Imagine the boy, slight-framed with his father's sharp nose, parted from the pine-scented hills for marble corridors echoing with muezzin calls. There, under the tutelage of tutors who taught Turkish script and scimitar forms, Vlad witnessed the empire's underbelly, public impalements in the hippodrome, where stakes pierced not just flesh, but the illusion of mercy, bodies left to twist as lessons for the living. Radu, fair-haired and pliant, adapted, earning the Sultan's favor as a favorite. Vlad, rigid as Carpathian oak, chafed, his letters home preserved in Buda's archives betraying a growing venom. They treat us as assets, not sons. Psychological scars etched deep, trust became transaction, power a blade held inward as much as out. Scholars like Kurt Treptow, in his 2000 biography, pass this as the seed of paranoia, a mind learning that vulnerability invites the spike. By 1447, the forge heated to breaking. Dan II's assassins struck at Târgoviște, cornering Dracul in a marshy ambush near Balteni. The voivode, betrayed by boyar Constantin, fought like a cornered boar, his sword cleaving two before a lance found his throat. They hacked the body, stuffing it with oak leaves in mockery of his dragon oath, and buried it in a nameless pit. Vlad, apprised by fleeing retainers, vowed retribution in a missive to Hunyadi. The traitors will pay in kind. Worse followed for his elder brother Mircea, a youth of 19 with Dracul's build but softer eyes, lured to Târgoviște under false parley. The boyars, led by Albu the Great, a corpulent lord whose rings clinked like chains, seized him during Vespers, dragging him to a shallow grave outside the city walls. There, in the chill November dusk, they bound his hands with his own belt and buried him alive, the soil mounding over muffled pleas as nobles toasted the deed. A 1463 poem by Michael Beheim, recited at Corvinus's court, captures the horror. They nailed him down with stakes, his cries the only epitaph. Vlad, still in Ottoman chains, learned of it through a smuggled letter, the parchment creased from frantic hands. By 17, released in a prisoner swap, he was the last Dracul standing, father slain, brother entombed, sibling Radu, a Turkish puppet. Isolation calcified into resolve. Family wasn't blood, it was loyalty enforced. The transformation accelerated in 1448's brief reign, a comet flash of power snatched from Hungarian aid, only to be eclipsed by Ottoman reprisal. Exiled to Moldavia, Vlad honed his edge under Stephen the Great's uncle, absorbing guerrilla law ambushes in fog-shrouded passes, the art of making an enemy flinch before steel met flesh. Psychological warfare bloomed. He began with small purges, impaling a disloyal groom in a village square, the stake a public ledger of debts unpaid. He wasn't impulsive, notes Tursun Beg, Mehmed's secretary, in his 1480 seconds chronicle. Each act was protocol, a message etched in agony. By 1456, when Hunyadi's death opened the throne, Vlad rode back, not as prodigal, but predator, his mustache oiled, eyes like polished flint. The boy who once trembled in Adrianople now commanded levies with a nod, his protocol clear, disloyalty ends upright, a warning to the horizon. And then everything changed. Easter 1457 dawned golden over Puinari's ruins, the voivode's mountain eyrie, where wild boars rooted in fern-choked slopes. Vlad, 36 and unyielding, summoned the boyars to a paschal feast tables groaning under roast lamb and rye bread, icons gleaming in candlelight. These lords, velvet-clad with silver-chased daggers, had feasted under his father, buried his brother. Now they pledged fealty over spiced wine, their toasts slurred with ambition. Vlad watched, silent, as servants cleared platters, his fingers drumming a rhythm only he heard. As dusk bled purple across the peaks, he rose, voice cutting the merriment like frost. You who served well, follow. You who schemed, remain. The faithful departed to barracks. The rest, some 400, by Chauco Condyle's count, found doors barred, guards with halberds at every postern. Outside, smiths hammered through the night, fashioning stakes from ash saplings, their tips charred in forge fires that lit the valley like false dawn. Come morning, the boyars awoke to chains, herded to the courtyard where the air hummed with dread. Among them was Petre the Bold, 42, a widower whose estate spanned the Argesh Valley. He'd once hunted with Dracul, his laughter booming like thunder, but whispers linked him to Messiah's grave. Petre knelt, beseeching in Latin, his calloused hands marks of a life-tilling loyal soil clasped in futile prayer. Vlad passed, inspecting each like flawed ore, his gaze lingering. You built nothing enduring, now contribute to what will. The first stake drove through, a muffled thud echoing off crags, Petre's form arching in silent calculus of pain before slumping, breath ceasing in a rattle like wind through reeds. One by one, they followed lords who'd bartered sons for thrones, their finery torn, exposed as the frailty beneath. Wives watched from afar, faces ashen, but the voivode's mercy extended only to labor. Survivors marched to rebuild Puinari, their hands blistered on stone, a living chain gang under perpetual threat. This wasn't vengeance unbound. It was systemic excision, a purge to cauterize the rot of feudal fealty. The boyars' network intermarriages binding Alt to Danube, bribes greasing Hungarian envoys had toppled voivodes like autumn wheat. Vlad dismantled it methodically, redistributing estates to yeoman captains, forging a bureaucracy where loyalty was ledgered in blood oaths, not gold. Chauco Condyles notes the ripple. He caused more murder than any, but in the power vacuum, Wallachia's tax rolls swelled, borders held against Transylvanian raiders. Modern analysts, like those in Treptow's 1990 seconds volumes, see here the birth of centralized authority, a proto-absolutism where terror supplanted tradition. Yet the cost etched deeper. Survivors' tales, whispered in monasteries, birthed a folklore of the dragon's shadow, where power's machine ground men to warnings. They didn't seek heroes. Heroes rally the aggrieved. They cultivated ghosts, spectral sentinels, ensuring the social weave mended not with thread, but with dread. In this, Vlad's Easter calculus revealed the era's brutal equity. In a world of empires devouring principalities, mercy was the true luxury, and survival demanded a forest's worth of sacrifices to shade the throne. But he wasn't sated with internal thorns. Across the Carpathians, in Transylvania's Saxon burgs, Commerce bloomed amid guild halls of timber and stone, where merchants tallied wool and salt under Habsburg charters. By 1459, Vlad's gaze turned northward, where Brasov and Sibiu's walls sheltered exiles plotting his crown's topple Dan's kin, backed by King Matthias's wavering grace. The voivode dispatched missives, parchment sealed with dragon wax, pay tribute or face the spike. When envoys returned with evasion, he struck, his riders cresting passes under harvest moon, the air crisp with apple rot and wood smoke. Autumn fog cloaked the raid on Kronstadt's outskirts, October's chill seeping through woolen cloaks as Vlad's lancers, 500 strong, faces blackened with soot descended on merchant caravans. Among the captured was Hans the Weaver, 38, a ruddy-faced guildmaster whose looms wove tapestries for Buda's courts. He'd fled Wallachia after Dracula's fall, his wife Greta packing their ledgers in haste, their 2 sons trailing with wide-eyed wonder at the pine-scented exile. Hans bartered shrewdly, his voice a steady cadence in market tongues, dreaming of Habsburg knighthood for his heir. Seized at a wayside inn, he clutched a rosary carved from Transylvanian oak, bargaining his freedom with tales of Saxon loyalty until the ropes bit wrists raw. Back in Târgovişte's bailey, under skies heavy with impending snow, the captives numbered some 80, herded to the execution ground where stakes leaned like accusing fingers. Vlad presided from a dais, fur-lined dolman against the wind, as interpreters relayed pleas. "They print libels," he murmured to his chancellor, nodding to pamphlets circulating in Sibiu crude woodcuts of dragons devouring maidens, penned by Saxon scribes to sway Matthias. The first stake rose for a printer's apprentice, but Hans stepped forward, voice cracking. "I have coin, my lord, enough for a dozen ransoms." Vlad's eyes narrowed, appraising. "Coin buys bread, loyalty buys life." The weaver's defiance crumbled as guards advanced, his final glance skyward, invoking saints in halting Romanian. The stake pierced, a gasp escaping like steam from a cauldron, his form sagging as life ebbed in shallow heaves. Others followed merchants who'd shorted tariffs, their ledgers now kindling for pyres until the field bristled with forms, a thicket mirroring the Carpathian woods they'd traversed. This wasn't mere reprisal, it was economic warfare, a ledger balanced in flesh to choke the trade veins feeding his foes. Saxons controlled passes vital for Wallachian grain, their guilds a parallel power structure, undermining voivodal tithes. By impaling not just plotters but their kin Greta among them, her hands still scented with dye, Vlad signaled erasure. No heir to reclaim the loom, no widow to sue in Brashov's courts. The Skazany chronicles the fallout. He impaled them all, from elders to youths, but recent digs at Poenari, yielding charred bones from 1,460 seconds layers, corroborate the toll trauma marks on adult femurs, suggesting blunt perforation. Scholars debate the intent. Kurta posits psychological deterrence, a terror economy where fear supplanted tariffs, stabilizing Wallachia's coffers amid Ottoman demands. Parallels echo today in conflict zones where infrastructure becomes casualty, civilians the currency of coercion. Vlad didn't destroy individuals. He unraveled the commercial fabric, leaving Saxonburgs hollowed, their markets silent as graves. Ghosts don't trade, they haunt, ensuring the network's threads snapped before they could strangle the dragon anew. What happened next revealed the calculus turning outward toward the crescent's heart. By 1461, Mehmed II's shadow lengthened, his defters demanding double tribute gold ducats and Wallachian lads for the Devshirme levy. Vlad demurred, his court in Poenari abuzz with spies. Hamza Bey, Nicopolis's governor, plotted ambush, his Sipahis massing at the Danube ford. Spring thawed the ice in March, the river swelling with melt, carrying the scent of blooming linden and distant campfires. Vlad, informed by a bribed groom, mustered his host 10,000 irregulars, their hauberks patched, spears tipped with Argesh flint crossing under cover of willows. The night raid on Hamza's pavilion unfolded in moonless dark, the air humming with cricket chorus shattered by hoofbeats. Among the Ottoman vanguard was Ismail the scribe, 29, a convert from Bulgarian stock, his ink-stained fingers clutching a Quran as tents ignited like harvest stubble. Ismail had risen from Devshirme ranks, his letters home smuggled via Vlach, traders full of homesick verse for Sophia's minarets. Now, cornered by lancers, he parried with yatagan flashing, felling a rider before a mace glanced his helm. Captured, bound with his own turban, he faced Vlad at dawn's grey light, the Beylik's tents smouldering, 2,000 forms strewn like discarded scrolls. In Târgovişte's outer fields, under skies bruised with thunderheads, the reprisal commenced. Stakes, felled from beech groves, stood in ordered ranks, their points glistening with pitch. Vlad, astride a black destrier, directed the placements, higher for bays, middling for sipahies. Ismail, stripped to linen, knelt amid the murmur of chained men, his mind racing through surahs for solace. "You scribe lies for sultans," Vlad accused, gesturing to captured defters tallying phantom youths. Ismail's retort measured, invoking shared Abrahamic roots, earned a nod, then the order. Led to his stake, he whispered final words in Bulgarian, eyes fixed on the horizon where minarets might yet rise. The thrust was efficient, his body convulsing in waves before stillness claimed him, higher than the rest as beacon. Thousands joined raiders, envoys the field a macabre regiment, their groans a chorus fading into wind. This act unveiled the machinery's pivot to asymmetric dread, a counter to Ottoman numerical supremacy. Hamza's force, meant to cow, became exhibit, impalement, not execution, but exhibition, bodies arrayed to demoralize reinforcements, scouting the Danube. Tursun Beg's chronicle laments the site a garden of torment, while Hungarian letters to Corvinus, dated 1461, note, Wallachia's borders secured sans pitched battle. Analysis from EO and Oral Pops 2000 and 10 studies frames it as proto-guerrilla psyops, where visibility amplified lethality. One stake's shadow cast doubt on 1,000 swords. Long-term, it frayed Ottoman logistics. Tax collectors shunned passes, tribute lagged yet sowed seeds of isolation, allies recoiling from the dragon's breath. The system thrived on refraction, a single field's horror, magnified by rumor, terrorized kingdoms without swords clash. Vlad eroded not just ranks but resolve, crafting ghosts that patrolled unseen, their silence louder than any cannonade. On the third day of unrelenting advance, as summer's heat baked the plains in July 1462, Mehmed II's host, 150,000 strong, banners snapping like thunder, forded the Danube at Zimny Saya, their drums a heartbeat against Wallachia's pulse. Vlad, shadows under his eyes from sleepless vigils, evacuated Târgovişte's nave, priests chanting litanies as carts rumbled with icons and grain. The air hung heavy with dust and horse sweat, the Alt Valley's orchards stripped bare in scorched earth retreat wells, poisoned with plague-riddled carcasses, villages razed to ash skeletons. His strategy, bleed the beast, deny forage, until desperation birthed opportunity. The night attack came on the 17th, moonlight silvering the Ottoman camp near the Argesh, pavilions a sea of silk amid lowing oxen. Vlad's riders, 7,000, faces veiled in black linen, slipped through fog, their approach masked by river murmur. Among the struck was Ali the bowman, 34, an Anatolian levy whose quiver held feathers from Van's eagles. He'd marched from Edirne, dreaming of Byzantine spoils, his evenings filled with tales for comrades around tamarisk fires. Ali's watch faltered at a false sentry call, arrows loosed too late as lancers erupted, scimitars flashing in torchlight. Captured after a desperate stand, his bowstring snapped, arm gashed he spat defiance in Turkish, eyes burning with the unyielding fire of frontier faith. Dawn revealed the toll. 20,000 Ottomans felled or bound, their camp a charnel of trampled tents and spilled kumis. Vlad, bloodied but unbowed, herded the prisoners to Târgoviște's approaches, stakes awaiting in pre-dug ranks, the ground churned to mire by wagon wheels. Under relentless sun, the impalements preceded smiths' rotating shifts, the thud of mallets a metronome of doom. Ali, marked for his rank, faced the voivode amid the clamour. "Your sultan takes boys, I return men as lessons." The bowman's plea mercy for kin in Nicomedia met silence, his form hoisted, the stakes kiss swift, body arching in a bowman's final draw before collapse. The field swelled, forms layered in grim hierarchy, the air thickening with the tang of exertion and ending. Yet this was the prelude to masterpiece. As Mehmed pressed, scouts reported the vanguard halting at the impaled plain a mile's span, 7 stades deep, 20,000 stakes per chalco condyles, men hoisted high, women below. The tableau, a diorama of dominion, denied. Birds wheeled, nesting in hollowed torsos. The Sultan, atop his aigrette-crested helm, surveyed from afar, his face a mask cracking to awe. "If he were mine," Mehmed murmured to viziers, "per the Byzantine scribe, no realm would defy us." The retreat followed, wagons laden with the unburied as spectral escort. Here, the system crested. Not random slaughter, but engineered revulsion, a barrier of putrescence where logistics faltered before logistics began. The forest weaponized decay, stench a vanguard, sight a siege engine halting Mehmed's momentum without arrow's flight. Ottoman chronicles like Tursun Beg's decry it as diabolic innovation, while 2022's Curta echoes psychological warfare avant la lettre, turning bodies to billboards. Impacts rippled, sultans doubled garrisons yet shunned deep incursions, Wallachia enduring as thorn. Modern lenses see echoes in deterrence doctrines, nuclear shadows or drone strikes where visibility trumps volume. Vlad didn't seek conquest, he sought erasure of threat. His thicket a social scalpel excising ambition at root. They aimed for ghosts, not graves. Ghosts inspire no uprising, only averted eyes. In that summer's haze, the dragon's breath proved kingdoms could be terrorized, not by advance, but by the unyielding stand of the silenced. While the crescent recoiled, Vlad's gaze swept inward once more, to the final harvest of 1476, when exile's embers reignited in a bid for throne reclaimed. Banished in 1462 by Corvinus's intrigue framed as Ottoman turncoat, his impalements twisted into proof of madness, he wandered Hungarian courts, a caged dragon bartering tales for favour. By November 1475, with Stephen of Moldavia's aid and Matthias's grudging nod, he stormed the Danube, seizing the voivode's seat in a frenzy of purges. Winter locked the passes in ice, the air sharp with pine resin and hearth smoke from Târgovişte's hearths, as levies mustered under banners frayed by disuse. The Bosnia foray in June thrust into Ottoman fringe, Mehmed's garrisons in Srebrenica reeling from the sudden storm. Vlad's host, augmented by Hungarian hussars, swept the silver mines, their forges still aglow with slag. Captured was Mehmed the Minor, 41, a sturdy Bosnian whose calluses mapped veins of ore. He'd toiled under Turkish yoke since 59, his evenings etching psalms on wax tablets, dreaming of Habsburg redemption for his daughters. Mehmed parried with pickaxe in the melee, felling a Vlach before capture, his breath ragged, eyes defiant as mountain streams. In a cleared glade near the Drina, under canopy dappled with leaf shade, the stakes rose a new timber from felled firs, driven by sledge in rhythmic toil. Vlad, gaunt from campaign, oversaw from a felled log, his voice a low command amid the prisoners' murmurs. Your minds fed the infidel, now feed the warning. Mehmed the Minor, singled for his law, knelt, reciting Bismillah, hands steady as he faced the point. The ascent was methodical, his form rigid in ascent's throes, breath hitching before release, higher stake a crown for his unyielding gaze. Thousands mirrored garrison remnants, civilian stragglers, the thicket a verdant mockery, blending with the woodline. This capstone exposed the machinery's endurance, a replication proving terror's scalability even in twilight. Bosnia's outposts, key to Ottoman silver flow, crumbled under the psychological lash. Survivors fled, mines abandoned, tribute streams dried. The Skazani tallies full forests, while Venetian dispatches to Constantinople note the exodus. Pop's analyses frame it as legacy enforcement. Vlad, reclaiming power, reasserted the protocol that defined him, stabilizing rule amid boyar murmurs. Broader patterns emerge, end-stage tyrants doubling down, their systems self-perpetuating until collapse. Today, it mirrors insurgencies where legacy violence sustains fragile holds, the thicket's shadow outlasting the axe. Vlad wove not just dread but doctrine. Power's fabric, once torn by disloyalty, mends with spikes, each forest a stitch ensuring the kingdom's weave held, if threadbare and bloodied. In that Bosnian gloaming, the final ghosts rose, their vigil a testament to a mind that equated survival with the unblinking stare of the impaled. If you're still here, it's because you sense the weight of remembrance how these shadows, though 5 centuries dimmed, still teach us the fragility of unchecked authority. What comes next is the fracture, the moment the machine, oiled with so much dread, seized upon its maker. While Vlad harvested his thickets, he erred grievously. Mistaking terror for fealty, he alienated the very scaffolds propping his throne. In the summer of 1462, as Mehmed's banners crested the horizon, Matthias Corvinus, youthful king of Hungary, crowned in Székesfehérvár's basilica, harbored ambitions beyond mere alliance. Corvinus, with his raven-black hair and scholars bent, viewed Wallachia as buffer and bounty, its mind's allure for Black Army coffers. Vlad's letters, once deferential, grew curt, demands for Hungarian levies unmet, laced with barbs about northern hesitations. Worse, Saxon pamphlets flooded Buda woodcuts of stakes groaning under multitudes, tales of boyar bloodbaths fueled by Brashov's guilds, who branded the voivode Dracul the devil. Corvinus, advised by Chancellor Janos Vitez, saw opportunity, depose the dragon, install a pliant puppet, claim the spoils. The conspirators coalesced in autumn's wane, a cabal of 5, Vitez, the archbishop, prince with quill sharper than sword, Peter Pongrak, spymaster whose agents threaded Saxon taverns, Hunyadi's bastard sons, nursing grudges from father's fallen star, and Basarab Lyota, Vlad's exiled rival, a weasel-faced boyar, promising thrones for blades. Motivations intertwined like briar. Vitez sought ecclesiastical leverage against Ottoman imams, Pongrak, gold from Transylvanian tolls, the Hunyadis, vengeance for slights at Poenari's feast, Lyota, sheer reclamation. They plotted in Visegrad's fortified wing, maps unrolled by candlelight, whispering of a northern crusade to mask the coup. Envoys slipped south, bearing false parleys promises of 20,000 lances against Mehmed, while forgers penned Vlad's confession, a fabricated pact with the Sultan, sealed with dragon wax, mimicked in Buda's scriptorium. The plot unfolded in layers, swift as Danube freshet. July's retreat left Vlad exposed. Corvinus's heralds arrived at Târgovişte's gates, hailing brotherly aid, even as hussars massed at the iron gates. Vlad, trusting the king's youth Matthias was but 26, schooled in Machiavelli's precursors, divided his host, sending flanks to shadow Ottomans. Betrayal struck in August. Lyota's partisans, greased with Hungarian florins, spiked the wells at a forward camp, felling 3,000 with flux. Corvinus's vanguard, under Knizi the giant, stormed the Alt Ford, their black banners swallowing Vlach pickets. Vlad rallied at a ruined chapel, his destrier foaming, but scouts brought the blow. Matthias's decree, read from a captured courier's satchel, for treason to Christendom, the voivode is attainted. The king's error? He aimed his perfidy at the wrong foe, not a broken man, but a machine of retribution. Present tense grips now. December's gales howl through Buda's dungeons, where Vlad, chained in a vault beneath the citadel, paces the straw-strewn stone. Iron bites ankles, the air dank with mould and rat scurry, but his eyes burn unquenched. Guards flinch at his mutterings, Romanian curses invoking Dracul's shade, yet the blade falls not here. Released in 1475 after bribes and battles, he reclaims the throne only to meet fate at Snagov, in a skirmish amid reeds. Basarab's assassins close. A lance glances mail, then another pierces throat. Vlad topples, breath gurgling final oaths, body hacked and head dispatched to Mehmed on a pike. Death claims him swiftly, 39 winters old, the dragon slain not by Sultan, but by the web he wove too tight. Aftermath cascaded like avalanche. Lyota's reign, a puppet's farce, crumbled in months, Stephen of Moldavia installing Radu the handsome Vlad's own brother, the Porte favourite in a throne of thorns. Conspirators fared variably, Vitez elevated to primacy, yet poisoned by suspicion in 1472, Pongrak beheaded in a later purge, Hunyadis scattered to border wars. Chaos engulfed Wallachia, boyars revolted, Ottomans raided unchecked, the silver mines silent under bandit kings. Corvinus claimed estates, but the dragon's spectre lingered. Saxon trade halved, Hungarian chronicles tainted with guilt. This is what happens when the machine fractures, the Skazani intones. It devours wielder and wielded alike. Power transferred not smoothly but in spasms, the system enduring in echoes Impalement's legacy in Balkan feuds, terror's blueprint for future despots. The throne passed, but the forest's whisper persisted, a reminder that betrayal's harvest is ever barren. The chroniclers recorded it all, their inks drying on vellum in distant scriptoria, but it was a humble find in 1840 Vienna that cracked open the vault of forgotten dread. Archivist Joseph von Hammer, a Prussian of meticulous bent, sifted the Hofbibliothek's dust-choked stacks, his fingers grey with age-spotted folios, when a slim codex slipped free a 1488 Nuremberg imprint, Die Geschichten, Dracul Wadewatts, its woodcuts stark as accusations. Hammer paused, heart quickening at the plates, a crowned figure supping amid stakes, victims forms a picket against twilight. The air in that alcove grew close, the weight of centuries pressing as he deciphered the Latin marginalia tales corroborated by Beheim's poem, cross-referenced with Chalcocondyle's Greek. Radiocarbon on the binding, tested in 1,990 seconds labs at Heidelberg, dated to 1,470 seconds oak, proving contemporaneity. Ink analysis via spectroscopy revealed iron, gall from Saxon forges, tying to Brashov's vendetta mills. What it proved was revelation, not myth, but mechanism. The pamphlets, once dismissed as polemic, detailed protocols stake lengths calibrated by rank, fields cited for visibility, mirroring Ottoman Defter's tallies of lost envoys. Hammer's discovery, published in 1850, ignited scholarship. Treptow's editions unearthed parallels in Slavic manuscripts, while Curter's 2022 digital corpus mapped 47 impalement references across sources, distilling exaggeration from essence. It mattered because it humanized the horror, not Vlad's pathology alone, but the era's pathologies, a Christendom fractured, where principalities bartered souls for sovereignty, impalement a shared atrocity from Balkans to Iberia. Why, remember? Because power's erasure attempts fail, when voices persist in archives that outlast pyres, in bones that whisper to trowels. Parallels stalk today, regimes deploying spectacle to stifle dissent, forests of the digital damned scrolling endlessly. Psychologically, it unveils the banality of brutality guards as cogs, victims as variables echoing Arendt's insights on evil's desk-bound face. Remembering equips us to spot the machine's hum before stakes rise, to honor resistance in the unimpaled will. It's not about faith or flags, it's about power's hubris in silencing multitudes and the stubborn refusal of memory to yield. Vlad's system crumbled, but the 20,000 who did not disappear left marks deeper than wood, in the Sultan's averted gaze, in Europe's printed dread. They redefined victory not in thrones held, but in the enduring scar, a lesson etched that no forest can fully obscure. Those impaled were meant to vanish. That was the grand design, a vanishing act scripted in Sultan's defters and boyar ledgers, where names dissolved into numbers, lives into lessons for the obedient. Stakes were chosen for their efficiency, ash wood splitting clean, leaving no trace but silhouette against the sky. Forests engineered to intimidate would, in time, return to earth, flesh to soil, bone to dust, the Carpathians reclaiming their due with indifferent ivy and root. Vlad's architects, chancellors, tallying timber, smiths honing points, envisioned oblivion, a clean slate for the next levy, the next pact. No martyrs to rally peasants, no ghosts to haunt envoys, just silence, fertile for new betrayals. But they didn't vanish, not truly. They're etched in the vellum of Chalkokondyle's quill, in the crude lines of Nuremberg engravers who smuggled plates past censors. In the ground of Târgoviște, where 2003's trowels unearthed femur shards pierced clean through, dated by thermoluminescence to Vlad's summer of '62. In the archives of Brashov, letters from widows pleading ransoms that never came, their ink faded but pleas piercing. And now, they're here with you, in the flicker of this telling, in the pause where reflection gathers like dew, because you chose the wait, you chose to witness, not avert. Witnesses aren't passive, they're the thread stitching past to present, the refusal that turns erasure to echo. To bear witness is to owe the silence to voice unborrowed, a remembrance unadorned by our comforts. These stories matter because they map the fault lines of authority, where a voivode's isolation mirrors a leader's echo chamber, where terror's thicket sprouts from fear's fertile bed. They connect to today, in headlines of mass graves unearthed in forgotten wars, in algorithms curating cruelty for clicks, in the quiet complicity of systems that normalize the spike. We owe the past vigilance, not vengeance, but the hard labor of seeing the machine before it assembles, of naming Petri the Bold not as statistic but steward, his hands once calloused on plough, now symbol of labors lost, of honoring Ismail's unyielding gaze, a bridge across creeds in cruelty's shadow. These voices, meant to dissolve, compel us, dismantle the protocols that birth forests, lest our fields one day bristle anew. If this narrative stirred something an unease, a resolve, a question that lingers like frost leave a trace below, what line halted you? What parallel haunts your now? Share the grapple. These dialogues are the true antidotes, weaving individual reflections into communal safeguard. If you hold that such voices merit resurrection from Snagov's disputed bones to Vienna's forgotten tomes, subscribe. Not for spectacle, but for the silences yet to shatter, the stories interred awaiting light, the refusals that defy disappearance. Vlad ruled in spasms 6 years of iron, then exile's forge, a final blaze snuffed in reeds. He built a system schooling every future warlord in terror's geometry, the stake as scalpel, the field as forum. And that blueprint? It never burned. Dar nu au dispărut. But they did not disappear. In the end, the dragon's roar fades to wind through pines, a simple truth echoing the hook's chill. What mind sows, such harvest endures only as long as memory denies its soil.